She's a veterinary tech, cat wrangler by day, and a writer, director of theater and film in her spare time. I am so incredibly pleased to say that I have known this wonderful human being since I was 9 years old. It has been a privilege to reconnect with her. Joy Kaczmarek reading One More Time with Feeling.
I tried to kill myself once. Well, it was more than once, but this was the first time. I was far from my New York home, going to graduate school in Los Angeles. I had thought that when I moved out west, that I would be leaving my bipolar disorder behind. Funny thing about chronic conditions, they are chronic and stubborn, and fit the exact same trajectory over time as one gets stressed beyond one's balance. About 18 months into my new residency, it found me again. Graduate school and a new city both began at a breakneck pace, and there had been little let up in the amount of things that needed to be accomplished. I turned 30 that summer. I stopped leaving the apartment. My imagination, the love of my life, began to turn toxic on me. I kept waiting for the ceiling to open up and to hear God tell me exactly what I needed to do to make this sleepless dream end. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever been delusionally depressed, but it's like living in an echo chamber. All you can hear are your own screams. By autumn, I was seeing a therapist from the medical school. I told her that I felt like God had abandoned me. She told me that I was delusional, and she prescribed me an antipsychotic medication. Now, I was already taking antidepressants and lithium. She stopped all that and put me on a series of new pharmaceuticals. By October, 5 weeks into the new semester, I reached the end of my rope. And what I can only remember as a fit of pique times 1,000, I downed a handful of my old medication and dared God to save me. I lay down on my couch and fell unconscious. Then, like a thunderbolt, I woke up. Now, I've heard a lot of people say that when they wake up from a suicide attempt, they felt disappointed to still be alive. When I woke up, my first thought that popped into my mind was, oh shit, not yet. I was not ready for this. My mind, failing though it was, managed to push my body to the phone receiver and my finger hit the redial. This all took place underwater for me. Just one little desperate bubble of panic pushing me toward life again. I noticed hazily that I was in a state of regret. But then the moment melted away until the door broke open and the paramedics were there. I faded out and in again to find myself parked in the hallway of Rampart Emergency Room. As they pumped my stomach, they took me to task, nurses muttering, "Not sure why a smart girl would do this," loud enough for me to hear, of course. And I had never heard of a mental health hold before, so I was stunned to find out I couldn't just go home. I remember thinking, but I have so much editing to do. The state of California had other ideas, and I spent the next 3 days in detention in Glendale. They wouldn't release me to anyone but immediate family, someone who would agree to take over my welfare. My younger sister came from Boston, taking time off from law school, which she really couldn't afford to do. She took me back to my apartment, washed my sink of cruddy dishes, and cleaned the apartment. Then she was gone. I was already glossing over it, telling people it was a mistake. I told myself that that wasn't a lie. The overdose was something I regretted and never had a mind to do again. And I spent the next 3 years trying to regain the momentum I'd created for myself in film school. I wavered, flopped, ascended, triumphed, wavered, flopped a few more times. I graduated school and stayed in LA another year trying to write. My struggle, that I had downplayed with the ease of a practiced magical thinker, reasserted itself with a manic episode that had me convinced California was going to fall into the sea. You may be able to spot the metaphor in my thinking way before it ever occurred to me. I just pulled up stakes and laughed. I drove across country in 74 hours and crash landed in Glens Falls again. Lest you think I actually escaped that time. I actually left my disease in California with all the stuff I had no room for anymore. I can assure you that my depression had stowed away underneath everything I wanted to forget. I tried to kill myself again. This time, in the aftermath, I was told that I had to deal. I had to accept myself without argument, without obfuscation. The time had come. It sucked, ladies and gentlemen. I was told there is no getting away. There is no escape from oneself. This includes all the flaws and inconveniences. This includes the paranoia, the voices, the delusions, the long mornings that stretch into the afternoon, where you stare at the ceiling and wish it would cave in. All of this one must swallow. Now, there's a good reason, a sweeter one than accepting reality, which can be cold comfort. When you stop running from yourself, you're forced to change. Right. You change. When you start to accept, then you start to care. You see the beauty in your ridiculous curiosity, that love for knowing what happens next in spite of how rough the road is. You start to see how ingenious you are, making a life out of a mixed bag of extraordinary strengths and extraordinary deficits. My oh shit moment was more than just a reflex. I went back to that moment over and over, wondering why the struggle? Biology or something more, something in me, not just an automatic response. Like I said, I know many people who wake up from trying to die quite disappointed. I can tell you that I wasn't happy to still be alive, but I wanted to be. I wanted to live. For a very long time, I wondered at that tiny part of me that pushed to keep going. I railed at it a lot of the time, trying to figure out a way to convince it that the pain and the suffering was not worth it, that it was too much. But it persisted. And in that second attempt, it somehow had gained even more strength. Suicide isn't the best way to find yourself. It's not even in the top 10. But I can't cast mine off completely. I met a part of myself that I didn't know existed, a part that said, no, this is still good. We can still make this good. It took a reprise for me to finally recognize my indomitable self. One more week in a hospital and one more med change. This time I held on, and it was scary and satisfying and sometimes even sublime. What I know now that I didn't know then is this. I needed to see how this ends. That small tug, that little voice that hung on during every depression and every mania was curious. It wanted to keep going, read all the pages until the end. It demanded satisfaction, and it wouldn't go away. It hangs over me still, no longer a lone voice in the wilderness, but a cherished member of the tribe. It reminds me constantly, especially when things are hard, that if I stop now, if I get into difficulty and despair, then I'll never know how all this ends. I'm not even saying my life is epic or even interesting. The only thing that matters to me is that it is mine. And that's all that little voice requires from me and from you too. Thank you.